Hello, my name is Tanner Gaza and I'm here to talk to you about bandsaws. So many of us have used a saw before in our life, either to do a small project or maybe even build an entire deck outside of our house. And we know what they do, they cut things. But there's a special type of saw called the bandsaw, which unlike other saws, it does not have a stiff, thick blade, but actually has a very thin band that runs around two wheels. And because of this, it can do some pretty cool things. So to help explain, I'm going to start off by talking about how a saw actually cuts when being used. I'm then going to talk about the special structure of a bandsaw, and then I'll finally wrap up with the unique things that a bandsaw is able to do that other saws cannot. So, when it comes to saws, we all pretty much think of this, the classic handsaw, and that is a large piece of metal that is strong and a little bit thick and has a bunch of teeth. And so what these teeth allow a saw to do that a knife cannot do is it can slowly cut through hard objects that you could not slice through with a knife. These teeth are very small blades in themselves, and they just take off small chunks as the saw passes over a hard object. And so if you have 100 teeth that pass over a piece of wood in one stroke, then you have 100 small cuts, and then you'll slowly remove material. Also, these teeth have a width, and that is called the kerf. And so as you remove this material, it's going to create a little gap. So as we see this table saw working through a board, the kerf or width of those teeth will take away some of that board. Now most fixed blade saws, like a table saw, has about a 1/8 inch kerf. And now it doesn't seem like that wide, but if you make more than 8 cuts on a board, which isn't that uncommon, you're going to take away a whole inch of material, and you can really cut down on the amount of lumber or metal that you have to work with. And so most fixed blade machines, we have like our jigsaw, our miter saw, and our table saw, uses a thick, strong, rigid blade that if you were to take off the machine would maintain its shape, but also take away a lot of material for its wide kerf. That's not the case with the bandsaw. So here we have a bandsaw, both closed but then open to see the internal workings. And that the saw blade, it's tough to see, but it's actually a thin band right here that runs around those two flywheels. So the blade with the teeth is actually very thin and flimsy. We can see here that you could actually squish the sides in because it's so wiggly. And what this allows is that it allows the blade to be very thin but make really fine cuts. Now, this thin blade cannot hold its own shape, so it has to be held under tension. Just like you would take a rope and pull it tight, you could touch the rope and it'd be stiff and hard. So what happens is that band rides over top and underneath the two flywheels, and those flywheels pull it tight and hold it in tension. And it also will pass through a guide. And so that guide will hold the blade exactly where it needs to be when cutting. So the exposed blade section may only be 4 inches or so, but as we can see, it is straight and stiff, and it will make a fine cut. So this is really special when it comes to the bandsaw, because instead of having to make a really wide piece of circular metal that will cut an object, all you have to do is move these flywheels a little bit further apart, and you'll get a larger cutting distance here. Now the unique part about that is that you can cut very large objects with a thin blade and not remove that much material. That's crucial in the lumber industry. As we see here, we just had a whole tree get sliced off really cleanly and flatly, and that was just because of this thin blade that ran along this saw. Now you couldn't make this cut with a normal circular saw because you'd have to have a blade that's 4 feet wide, and that would be way too much material to have on that blade. It'd be pretty dangerous, and it would cost a lot of money. Because of the structure of the bandsaw, it's very unique and can make really special cuts like this. So, in talking about the bandsaw, it's truly a unique tool. And we talked about first of how a saw actually cuts and what the kerf is. We then talked about why the bandsaw is different than most other stiff-bladed saws, and then we talked about the special thing it can do because of that. The bandsaw truly is an innovative product that has changed how every carpenter, but a lot of industries work as well. And I thank you for your time today and hope you learned a little bit about the bandsaw.